Hello, it's time for the sermon synopsis for April 24, 2016. A lot of times when people, particularly mainline churches, look at Jesus and Paul, they take kind of a good cop, bad cop attitude towards them. That Jesus is the good cop. He's the one that's all about love and kindness and compassion, and well, Paul's the bad cop. He's the one that has all the nasty stuff, and he somehow took that simple message of Jesus and turned it into a lot of strange theology and was harsh and cold and all that other stuff. No, not that other stuff at all. If you actually take the time to read the Gospels and read Paul's letters, you'll realize that if anything, Paul is the good cop. If you're looking for language about hell and condemnation, that's Jesus, not much in Paul. If you're looking for someone to tell you that Gentiles, non-Jews, have some serious problems, that would be Jesus, who referred to a Syrophoenician woman as a dog, and he wasn't insulting her looks, he was insulting her background. But Paul actually had a very positive attitude towards non-Jews. He understood that they could be every bit as good as any Jew, sometimes better. He understood that God was a God of love just as much as Jesus did, and perhaps even more so. Yes, he also understood something of the wrath of God, but there's a lot more of that in Jesus. And when it comes to women, Paul shouldn't take the rap that he does. Mainstream scholarship is all about condemning Paul about women, but when it actually looks at what he wrote and what he didn't write, they usually say that the letters, Ephesians and Colossians, the pastoral epistles, that have all that anti-woman stuff in it, he didn't write those. So how can you say that a man who didn't write those letters is all that misogynist or chauvinistic? The simple fact of the matter is that if you put Paul in his historic framework, he's actually much more of a liberal than a conservative in our terms. And there are a couple things to be drawn from recognizing this. Now, the first is that instead of simply taking somebody else's word for something, instead of going along with stereotypes, maybe it would be helpful to actually look and see what somebody actually said and or wrote. That's the first thing. The second thing, though, is to understand that Paul's attitude was powerfully shaped by the fact that he realized that the road that he was on wasn't a good one, that his condemnatory attitude towards Gentiles, towards others who thought differently from himself, that just didn't work. It was all turned around on that road to Damascus, where he had this vision of the risen Christ, and suddenly he realized that he needed to be much more about love. And so he wrote that famous passage in 1 Corinthians 13 about the greatest of these is love, but in point of fact, he wrote about faith and hope and love in most of his letters. Hopefully, you'll take the time to read Paul, to recognize that he was someone that was really on to a God of love, that was really on to the idea that God loved not just a few people in one culture, but loved everybody. And he did everything that he could to spread that message of a loving God to other people. If you're looking for a message with a lot of grace and a lot of love, look at the letters of Paul again. But if you still really want that hellfire and brimstone, that condemnation, that calling other people snakes and vipers, referring to another person as a dog, then turn to Jesus. That might make you think a little differently today. If so, I hope it does. Join us anytime on Sundays at 11:10. We're open all year long, and we'd love to have you here at Pilgrim Congregational United Church of Christ, located at the corner of Glenlord and Washington. May God's peace be with you.